Hello there. The UK Supreme Court has just made the completely transphobic proclamation that a woman is now a biological woman. The UK Supreme Court, in an unusual display of common sense, has today ruled unanimously that a woman is defined as a biological woman. This will come as a huge surprise for many of us who had thought that UK judges were unreformable, anti-common sense, woke idiots. But they came out with that unanimous ruling that the definition of a woman is biological woman, meaning transgender people with gender recognition certificates will not be recognised as of the opposite sex under the Equalities Act 2010. And the definition of the word transphobic will probably have to be rewritten. Something that has huge positive ramifications for ordinary women going about their business and wanting to feel safe in public women-only spaces like public bathrooms and school changing rooms. And then there's the matter of sports to consider too, as well as the so-called hate crime of misgendering, one imagines. Now, this will also have ramifications for those of the trans community who just want to live a quiet life and bother no one, many of whom did not want all of this hoo-ha. The problem for them, though, is that there is a hugely vocal but tiny minority who have been trying to push their position down the public's throats for years, if not decades. It is those people who have cowed politicians into accepting their views as somehow progressive, when the way some of them were pushing it was verging on the violent. And that very small minority will be shocked when J.K. Rowling says what she thinks about this case. And J.K. Rowling and many like her will be vindicated. Like former Olympian and women's rights activist Sharon Davis, who called this extraordinary and celebrated that the Supreme Court has acknowledged the existence of biological sex. Now, this court case began with a small group of women in Scotland trying to overturn the SNP government's ludicrous position that anyone who calls themselves a woman is a woman, ending up with unsavoury men being sent into women's prisons, as well as women feeling uncomfortable in public women-only spaces when they were invaded by males self-identifying as women. So this group of women, For Women Scotland, brought a case against the Scottish Government using the Scottish legal system, but they were stymied at every turn by the SNP government. So it ended up in the UK Supreme Court, and this ruling will affect the whole of the UK, obviously including Scotland. And the Supreme Court judges, led by President of the Supreme Court Lord Reid, ruled on this today in an 83-page ruling saying that it was not the Supreme Court's business to create policy on how transgender people are protected by the law. They seem to have pulled their horns in a bit since slapping down the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the Crown over that proroguing of Parliament case. I reckon, had this women-only case been brought before the Supreme Court a couple of years ago, we might have seen a completely different policy-making outcome. Anyway, Lord Hodge, the Deputy President of the Supreme Court, said, "Our role is to ascertain the meaning of the legislation which Parliament has enacted to that end. The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex, or is a woman to be interpreted as extending to a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate?" And the court's view is that it does not extend to those with gender certificates, with Lord Hodge also saying, The terms women and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But, he went on to say, we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph for one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not. With Reuters saying, the United Kingdom's top court on Wednesday upheld an appeal by a campaign group on whether transgender women are legally women under equality legislation, ruling that the law referred to a biological woman and biological sex. Meaning in real terms that self-identification is dead and those gender recognition certificates are worthless. It also means the egg-faced SNP government, led by John Swinney, will have to start dismantling all that self-ID paraphernalia they've built up over the years. The SNP dreams of pushing their agenda into the whole UK and further afield via their laws is over. Now, I will point out that in reality this is not a victory for common sense. The Supreme Court made it quite clear that their decision is based purely on the law as made by Parliament. So it is not beyond the realm of possibility for some future woke lefty government, or even maybe this Labour woke lefty government, to change that law. All it would take is a short act of Parliament to amend the Equalities Act 2010 so as to make that Supreme Court ruling null and void. That's how our legal system works. And that ball will be quickly picked up by this tiny but vocal minority. They will now be looking at ways into the political system to start a drive to get that law changed. Now, I'm assuming that under this current ruling, we will no longer see men constantly appearing at the top of female sport medal tables, or see women placed at severe physical risk in athletic competition because the sport's organisers are too limp to prevent it. Also, one assumes that inadvertent and accidental misgendering will no longer be thought of as a microaggression or a non-crime hate incident or even a hate crime. Although I'm not sure our woke-infested police will be fast at catching on here, they'll probably find an excuse to pull you up for it. After all, many of our modern police officers do seem to be on the hate crime power trip, if you judge them from social media interactions with ordinary members of the public. But this Supreme Court ruling should, and I say should, have the outcome of freeing up some officers shining their seats looking for transphobic crimes and instead of getting out and talking to the victims of burglary. But I somehow doubt it. After all, with a burglary you get a crime number and can claim on the insurance. No, two-tier Keir's best will still be focusing on the online hurty words brigade. Or at least one side of the online hurty words brigade. But I'm hoping that today's ruling will make it a lot easier for those working hard for the safety and rights of women. The law is now on their side. Finally, please like, subscribe and comment below, and a big shout out to our Patreon supporters, and thank you for watching.